Intel and TSMC agreed to form chip-making joint venture report. No smoke without fire. Did the semiconductor manufacturing world just shrink a nanometer or two? Intel and TSMC have reportedly reached a preliminary agreement to create a joint venture to operate the Intel's fab in the US. The news comes from Reuters, which cites a report from the information based on two sources familiar with the matter. Intel has not yet commented on the matter, so Tom's Hardware has reached out to the company for more information. Under the terms of the agreement, TSMC is set to own the 20% of the joint venture. It's unclear which companies will own the remaining 80%, but earlier this year, TSMC reportedly approached multiple leading fabless chip designers and headquarters in the US, including AMD and Broadcom, NVIDIA and NVIDIA. And Qualcomm is about to invest in the joint venture, which would own multiple fabs in America. In both NVIDIA and TSMC's board a member rate denied this discussion. This agreement was reportedly influenced by the U.S. government, specifically the White House and the Department of Commerce, as part of efforts to address the ongoing operational difficulties in Intel. The U.S. authorities viewed the partnership as a means to stabilize Intel. The IDM 2.0 strategy has faced multiple challenges as the company has so far become a leader neither in the product nor in the semiconductor production technologies. At the same time, the current U.S. government will not support the sales of Intel's fab to foreign investors, especially TSMC. At this point, it's unclear what exactly TSMC environment would be with the Intel's of American fabs, which cost tens of billions of dollars, so many of which can be used to make a processor for Intel, including fabs capable of producing on Intel 3 and Intel 4 process technology, and only one or two which can make us processors on Intel's 18A fabrication technology. It's also unclear how TSMC's plan to own 20% of the Intel Foundry aligns with its own plans to invest $165 million in its original Fab 12-1 site to make chips for its partners, including Apple. The financial market responded quickly to this news, and the Intel stock's price increased nearly 7% after reports surfaced, which helped the company to recover after the drop of market capitalization caused by the new import tariffs that were implemented by U.S. by the contrast shares of TSMC traded in the U.S. dropped by about 6%, as highlighting the differing investor reactions to the deal. As both Intel and TSMC are in their quiet period, they cannot make any comments regarding future plans or even factors that can impact them materially. But we have reached out for the comment. So the TSMC Intel JV back on the cards. The Intel TSMC JV joint venture is back on the cards again, as according to the report in the information. The report says the two companies have reached a preliminary agreement to form a JV, a joint venture that would run Intel's fab. The White House and the U.S. Department of Commerce are said to be encouraging both sides to an agreement. Intel and other semiconductor companies said to be include Broadcom, AMD, and NVIDIA, would hold the majority of the stock in the JV, which would include all or some of Intel's fab. It's reported that TSMC will acquire a 20% stake in the JV and return for sharing its manufacturing technology with Intel and training Intel staff. But TSMC will not be required to put up any capital for the stake. It's also reported that some Intel executives feel that the deal might result in Intel adopting TSMC's process technology and dropping Intel's own technology. So we have another article about Intel. The Intel announces 18A process node has entered risk production. A crucial milestone comes as company lamps to a Panther Lake chips. 5 nodes in 4 years is nearly accomplished. The Intel's Kevin Oakley, Senior Vice President of the Foundry Services, announced progress on the company's 18A process node on stage at the Vision 2025 conference. At its Vision 2025 conference, Intel announced today that it has entered risk production of each 18A process node, a crucial production milestone signifying that the node is now the early stage of low volume that test manufacturing runs. Intel's Kevin Oakley, the Senior Vice President of Foundry Services, made the announcement as Intel nears the full completion of each 5 nodes in 4 years. 5N4Y plan, which was originally set in motion by ex-CEO Per Gelsinger as part of the company's quest to retake the semiconductor crown from rival TSMC. So the conference also marks the first time that the new CEO, Lip-Bu Tan, has taken the stage as a new leader of Intel. The Intel originally announced its 4-year plan in June 2021, and despite canceling the high-volume manufacturing of the 28 node as a cost-cutting measure, so Intel is the cusp of reaching the finish line with each 18 node. Notably, Intel's 5N4Y plan hinged to the process node being available for production rather than actively being in the final high-volume manufacturing HVM stage. The risk reduction, while it sounds scary, is actually an industry standard terminology, and the importance of risk production is we've gotten the technology to point where we are freezing it. But overly explained, our customers have validated that, yeah, 18A is good enough for my product, and we have to now do the risk part, which is to scale it from making hundreds of units per day to thousands, and 10,000, tens of thousands, and the hundreds of thousands. So risk production is scaling our manufacturing up and ensuring that we can meet not just capabilities of the technology, but the capability at scale. So the risk production is one of many steps on the long road to fielding a new process node, and indicate that the company believes the node is nearly ready for HVM. Intel has already produced plenty of 18A test chips and shoppers, and typically wherein the multiple different designs are prototyped on a single wafers. In contrast, the reduction production consists of pressing wafers full of a single chip design into low volume manufacturing as the company tweaks its manufacturing flow and qualifies the node and process design kit (PDK) in real-world production runs. Intel will run the scale production up a higher levels in the second half of the year. This step of the bring up the semiconductor process comes from R&D design and prototype stage of the development. There is some risk to risk production though, as the field and functionality primarily functionality is a parametric yield and etc. And so there can be subpar as the companies refine each manufacturing techniques and optimize each tooling as it works up the learning curve. As such, customers typically use risk production to manufacture qualification or engineering samples, and the customers aren't given as strictly yield targeted guarantees as they are not fully qualified for HVM. However, some customers are willing to assume those risks to get a payoff of gaining the significant time to market advantage through early access to the node, which then allows them to just adjust and perfect their designs before competitors even begin production. Intel hasn't yet specified if the 18A RISC production is for its own Panther Lake processor, which Sage will arise on a schedule later this year, or if the production runs are for its external foundry customers. However, Panther Lake, Intel's first 18A processors, will enter mass production later this year. Such as the Panther Lake chips are likely the RISC production subject. This schedule generally aligns with our expectation for a typical RISC production to HVM timeline for Intel. Although the Intel pioneered several new technology on its canceled 20A node, the 18A 1.8 nanometer chips will be the first productized chips with both power via backside power delivery and a ribbon-fed gate-all-around GAA transistors. So power via provides optimized power routing to improve the performance and transistor density, and ribbon-fed also provides better the transistor density along with the faster transistor switching, but in a smaller area. Intel also continues to work on its broader foundry roadmap, which includes the follow on a 14A node. Intel's first to utilize a high NA EUV lithography. So the numerous node extension to other nodes will further expand each foundry service portfolio to a broader range of applications. This development comes during turbulence at Intel Foundry as the company adjusts to changing macroeconomic factors. Intel recently delayed the build-out of its Ohio operation until 2030, for example. So, however, the announcement of the 18A RISC production mirrors the positive reports that Intel is running its first 18A wafers through its Arizona fabs. So we expect to learn much more about Intel's future plans at its Foundry Direct Connect event in late April. Okay. GlobalFoundries merged the UMC takeover in effort to adopt Project Ultron, a new foundry that could challenge TSMC. The GlobalFoundries is mulling a possible merger with the Taiwanese semiconductor producer United Microelectronics Corporation to strengthen their shared role in making chips using mature and specialty process technologies, according to an assessment document reviewed by Tom's Hardware. The document outlines plans for Project Ultron, which is meant to create a powerhouse controlling a significant share of the global production of chips. However, the plan will likely face major financial and political and regulatory challenges. Nikkei also has reported on matter, citing that it has reviewed an assessment plan. UMC has denied involvement, saying it is not currently conducting a merger. After ceasing to develop leading-edge process technology in late 2010s, GlobalFoundries and UMC are focused on specialty and mature process technologies, avoiding competition with the TSMC, Intel, and Samsung Foundry, enabling the companies to focus on profitability and growth. So the semiconductor market in general and foundry market in particular have changed significantly in recent years. However, the SMIC has become a much bigger competitor than it was 7 or 8 years ago, and China has invested tens of billions of dollars into fabs that use mature process technologies. So by contrast, GlobalFoundries revenue has declined since 2022, whereas the UMC's revenue has stagnated in recent years after peaking in 2022. So Tim Bieran, named the GlobalFoundries next chief executive in February, will take over in April and is considering to acquire UMC, one of GF's main rivals. As combining two major foundries would create a stronger competitor in the mature node segment, for example, 28 nanometer and above. So especially for automotive, industrial, and legacy applications. The combined company is expected to control around 28% of the mainstream node foundry revenue, and a greater scale would enable better pricing power, operational efficiency, and stronger negotiating leverage with the customers. So the GF, GlobalFoundries, and UMC, if combined, will still be smaller than TSMC, and which controls 44% of the mainstream node share. Very rational for GlobalFoundries to buy each rival and for UMC and to become a part of the GF. And the mature node segment is increasingly threatened by local Chinese fabs, and a combined GF-UMC entity could consolidate global capacity and better compete on a cost and scale and viability. Also, UMC and GF has different but complementary customer sets, so a merger could enable crossing sale as better utilization of fabs and a more diversified revenue streams and reducing business risk alike. Also, UMC is heavily concentrated in Taiwan, while GF operates fabs in the US, Germany, and Singapore. The merger would spread geographic risk and reduce reliance on Taiwan and appeal to customers and government looking for supply chain resilience. So the Taiwan would still lead with 40% of capacity, UMC, followed by Singapore with 25%, shared by both, and a smaller share in China, 11%, Germany 9%, the USA 9%, and Japan 6%. The growth is expected in the US and Germany and Singapore, and while capacity China and Taiwan is projected to decline. So last but not least, GlobalFoundries and UMC will have the scale to develop a new single-digit nanometer process technologies, which will open doors to new applications and design wins for the combined company. So according to the document. However, it remains to be seen whether it will invest sub 10 nanometer process technologies to compete against TSMC, Intel, and Samsung Foundry. While the idea for GlobalFoundries to acquire UMC is ambitious to project that a lot of rational, it will hard to accomplish. The market capitalization of the GlobalFoundries is $20.41 billion, whereas the market capitalization of the UMC is $19.86 billion, $6 billion. So GF does not have the cash to acquire UMC. Now it is either have to take on debit, issue for more shares, or ask its main investors Mudabala for cash. However, even if funding is secure, the regulatory barriers could prevent the transaction from happening. If the GlobalFoundries were to take control after the deal outcome, the outcome would likely to be opposed by Taiwanese government. China approval could be hard to obtain too, as the new entity will be tough rivals for Chinese mature node fabs. However, if the merged company commits to build additional capacity in China, this could change the mind of the regulatory organization and the people's public. Okay. That's another. The R&D balancing I/O and warehouse distribution inside SSDs optimize cache management. R&D as balancing I/O and warehouse distribution inside SSDs with optimized cache management. Article presents a method for selecting victim data pages from data cache by referring to the factors of the pending I/O request and the warehouse level on the flash memory. Journal of System Architecture has published an article written by Xiaoshu Wu, Jiao Wu, and Aobo Yang, and Fei Yang, and Qin Kai, and a college from Jian Weilao, it's College of Computer and Information Science, Southwest University in Chongqing, China. The abstract is a NAND flash memory-based solid-state drives (SSD) have adopted by storage infrastructure in a wide range of the computing systems in order to service of I/O request. The logical page address LPA of the request should be mapped to a physical page address PPA, timed page level address mapped into SSDs as a fundamental mapping scheme. Static mapping needs a small-scale mapping table and ensure good read parallelism, but it may bring about uneven I/O and wear-out distribution across the SSD power unit. For example, flash planes, thus resulting in a low write efficiency. To mitigate the negative effect of the static mapping, this paper proposes another cache management scheme to not only guarantee I/O responsiveness, but also balance the I/O and wear-out distribution. Specifically, we first introduced directly flushing a portion of the data pages onto the flash array, while they are cold and target parallel units have endured a small number of erasure operations. After that, we present a method for selecting a victim data pages from the data cache by referencing to the factors of pending I/O request and the wear-out level of the flash memory through a series of simulation experiments on a selected block-out I/O traces of the real-world applications. We show that our approach achieved an average I/O latency reduction of 16.1% compared to a baseline, 13.6% over CGAR and 12.4% over LCR and 6.6% over ARB, while simultaneously balancing out and wear-out distribution. These results demonstrate each superiority over the existing state-of-the-art schemes. Okay, this is quite an old one. Apple reportedly building an AI server processor with the help from the Broadcom, and something called Baltra expected to make a debut in 2026, as perhaps what the tech both already use. Apple is reportedly working with the chip giant Broadcom to develop a custom server processor to power the AI services and features built into each operating system. According to the information, which cited 3 unnamed sources with the knowledge of matter, the project is codenamed Bartra and is expected to enter production in 2026. Beyond this, details are predictably pretty thin. At the iGiant Developer Conference earlier this year, Greg Federighi, SVP of Software Engineering, declared the Apple Intelligence would run both on device and in a private cloud using servers powered by Apple Silicon. The idea that Apple might be building custom chips in the Gen AI isn't surprisingly. The IBs had designed its own ARM-based silicon for years. The idea that Broadcom might be involved in this process shouldn't come as a shock, either as the two companies already know or work together on a 5G componentry. The Broadcom is a massive conglomerate that, among other things, licenses intellectual property for use in semiconductor designs, particularly in the field of the high-speed networking. For instance, back in the Hot Chips conference, we looked at an optical interconnected chiplet designed for the packages alongside the GPUs and other accelerators to support the larger scale of the compute clusters. More recently, Broadcom showed off its 3.5D packaging tech, which is designed to help chip makers scale beyond the electrical limits, similar to what Intel has done its Ponte Vecchio GPU Max GPUs. AMD uses similar techniques to build its MI300X accelerator, which combines 8 compute chiplets and vertically stacked on the top of the 4 I/O dies, which handles memory management and full chip-to-chip communication. Broadcom 3.5D XD chip, as seen, The shoulder looks surprisingly similar to the AMD's MI300X, but is open to anyone to raise it, click to enlarge. The Broadcom's 3.5D Extreme Dimension System in package attack as 3.5D XD chip for short is essentially for blueprint that customers can use to build multi-die processors on their own. Like AMD's MI300X, it stacks compute dies on the top of a logic die that interfaces with the high band bandwidth memory HBM, but breaks out the other I/O functionality into a separate set of dies. So the Broadcom's approach to interfacing computer dies interface with the rest of the system logic is a little different. According to the Broadcom, previous 3.5D packaging technology have used for face-to-back approaches which require more work to route through silicon vias, TSVs, which shut data between the two. So the Broadcom design uses a face-to-face approach, which allows for denser electrical interfaces between the chiplets using the hybrid copper bonding HBC. Though we are told that this is allowed for substantially higher die-to-die interconnect speed and shorter signal routing. The largest of these designs will support 2, 3D stacks and a pair of I/O chiplet and up to 12 HBM3 modules on a single package, totaling more than a 6,000 millimeter scale of the silicon area. Broadcom expected the first part based on these designs to enter production in 2026. Coincidentally, that same timeline that the information report Apple's project Bartra is aiming at. So it's unclear that if the projects are related. However, some Apple chip designs, the M2 Ultra for instance, already makes use of the multi-die architecture, so it is not a stretch to a suggestion some overlap. We likely will not know much more about Bartra until it becomes a reality. The Apple is notoriously tight-lipped about product before they are officially announced, and while the Broadcom is always happy to discuss its chip tech, it's highly secretive about who's actually buying it. Apparently, that the app list includes some pretty good names. For instance, Google reportedly made extensive use of the Broadcom IP and the Tensor Processing Unit (TPUs), and it's not a strategy to imagine the Apple taking advantage of existing technology rather than reinventing the wheel. The list, okay. And this time it's quite old, remaining one article. TSMC founder says Intel has neither a stated or an CEO. But recently, a new CEO was appointed. Intel could have invested more money on a proper AI chip than a founder service. Oh, okay. It's still arguably too early to confidently state how successful Intel's 18A process technology 1.8 nanometer class will be, but in about a year, we should acknowledge Pat Gelsinger's 5 nodes in a 4 years plan was a success. That said, Intel's failure to offer a competitive AI processor is evident even today, which gives Morris Chang, the founder of TSMC, reason to claim the Intel should have focused on the development of AI processor rather than making the chips using leading edge nodes. The TSMC icon also has said that the Intel had either a strategy nor a new CEO that have finding both will be difficult. I do not know why Pat resigned, said Chang at a process conference dedicated to publication of his biography. Reuters report, I do not know if his strategy was bad or if he did not execute it well. Compared with the AI, he seems to focus more on becoming a foundry. Of course, now it's that Gelsinger should have focused on AI. Chang's criticism is understandable. NVIDIA owns tens of billions of dollars per year selling AI processors, considerably more than TSMC earn on fabbing those chips. If the Intel has competitive AI processors, it could make more money than it would want to make its chips for others. So it's easy to argue that AI strategy should have been prioritized years ago. When Gersinger took a resign in 2021, his main strategy was Ryan's in 2021, his main strategy was focused on the IBM 2.0, which involved developing 5 leading-edge process technologies in 4 years and becoming the world's second largest contract maker of chips by 2030. So while Intel clearly had a product strategy as well, the world has not yet to see a major product developed under Pat Singer as the CEO. Last month, Intel announced it would miss its $500 billion sales target for the Gaudi 3 AI accelerators there this year due to the software issue. It usually takes over 3 years to develop, implement, and mass produce a chip. Gaudi 3 was the least politically defined before Gersinger became the CEO of the Intel. So it is impossible to say it's responsible for its product hardware. Nonetheless, the vision focus on AI software seems evident. Chan's biography, released recently, provide a deeper context to its market. The memoir chronicle his life from 1964 to 2018 and shed light on TSMC's key partnerships with companies like Apple and Qualcomm. It also records Intel's decision in the 1980s to the decline and invitation to invest in TSMC. Another move that at that point is easy to see hindsight as missed opportunity. The Intel current situation is marked by uncertainty with no limitation of success for Gersinger. Its strategic direction seems for now to develop a competitive product and retain manufacturing operation and the means of facing the same challenges. And although the Gersinger is out and the board of directors has not to say whether the company has defined its revamped strategy for AI. Okay. Today, thank you for your time. See you next time.